What's up, UFO Garage? Good morning. This is going to be our first little interview of the day. We've got Mr. Jim Goodall here with us.
We're
going to be chit-chatting with him a little bit and just kind of seeing what he's all about. Jim.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you. This is Wayne's World, Austin chapter.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah, just tell the people a little bit about who you are and how you got into this whole thing.
I've been doing this for fun, and that's what I do it for, is for fun. I don't make any money at it. This is my first UFO conference that I've actually been a speaker.
Oh, wow.
I've only been to two other ones, the one in Phoenix last year, and then Doc Skinner had his function up, the Disclosure Con up in Pine Top.
Oh, cool.
Last year, and he's gonna. I know I'm going to be a speaker at his one for this year. But I'm a hardware guy. I'm an airplane guy. I saw my first Blackbird. I had not quite 19 years old, and that was 1964.
Wow.
I saw it before the general public, and I've never been the same since. So I've been into spooky airplanes, Area 51, things that go bump in the night.
Yes.
And because of my passion for spooky airplanes, it also has led into people who are also into the UFO community. Now, I was just recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, I was a docent at Kitt Peak National Observatories outside of Tucson.
Okay. They
have 22 optical telescopes. And one of them, the 2.1 meter, which was operated by Caltech, using adaptive optics over a 5-year period in a small area of our galaxy, the Milky Way, they identified over 8,000 exoplanets.
Wow. That's awesome. And there's more and more that we find all the time.
And just before I quit volunteering, I didn't care for the new volunteer coordinator. I have no tolerance for people who talk down to me.
Right. Yeah.
Speak to me at my own level, but don't talk down to me, especially when you're a volunteer.
Right.
And we had a thing with the National Science Foundation with a lead astronomer. He had just come back from a conference, and these were all the astronomers that have been looking for exoplanets. I mean, from all around the world. And based on those numbers of what they have found in different segments of the universe, they figure that there are, for every star in the universe, and that's a number you can't cram in your head because there's way too many zeros. But for every star in the universe, they calculate there's 1.5 planets. And out of that incredible number of planets, exoplanets, they calculated at least 2 billion, and that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a brown dwarf similar to our star in an inhabitable zone with liquid water.
Whoa.
2 billion.
2 billion?
Now, our galaxy is 4 billion years old.
Right.
The universe is 14.5 billion years old.
Yeah.
And to quote Jodie Foster's character in Contact, if we're the only ones, what a waste of space.
Right, yeah. I feel that way too.
And over the years, I've been doing this, digging up stuff on spooky airplanes, things that go bump in the night for almost 50 years.
Right.
It makes me an old guy. But I've been there. I've been in the field. I've been to the fence line at Area 51 and Tonopah Test Range over 80 times in the last 40 years.
That is quite a bit. You think you hold the record on most visits?
No, I think Glenn Campbell.
Oh, okay.
He's gone. He's sort of I won't say. He's no longer in the picture.
Right.
But he lived in Rachel for I think 5 years, and he was out every day. So he's been to the fence line. He's been all over the desert many times.
He's cool.
Yeah. So it's something. It's fun. It's something that no one else was doing.
Right.
I mean, the first time I went to the Little Alien, I decided to drive around the Nevada test site And it was 1987. Joe and Pat Travis had just bought the little alien. It was, I don't think it wasn't called that yet. But I got gas there, because there was a gas station at one time. And at one time, the population was about 85. I think it's down to about 40 now.
Yeah.
But the places, I've been drawn to it. I haven't seen any UFOs. I've seen strange airplanes.
Maybe something that we were working on, right?
Yeah.
And because of my strong interest in spooky airplanes, I sort of aligned myself with people with similar interests.
Uh-huh.
And in 1972, I met John Lear. I met John through John Andrews from Testers.
Right.
He was the day I met John Andrews, I knew he'd been my best friend for life. And he was
awesome.
up until the day he died. And you run into people and you just know that.
Yeah. You have that connection.
Everything just sort of congeals. And because of John Andrews, I met John Lear. And because of John Lear, I met Bob Lazar. And I met Bob before he had gone to work out in the desert.
Right.
And the day I met him, John Lear and I we're going up US 95, heading towards Scotty's Junction, heading towards Tonopah.
Uh-huh.
And the world had not seen the F-117 yet. And an F-117 flew over us about 1,500 feet. We about crashed the car.
and that's the stealth-looking plane, right? The boomerang-looking.
Yeah, it looks like an arrowhead.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I asked Lear, I said, do you have any idea where there's things flying out of? Yeah, I heard about there's a new complex at Tonopah. So we go to the town of Tonopah, then we head out US 6. You go about 14 miles. There's a big sign with a dummy nuclear weapon. It was a B-43 nuke with a Nike Ajax booster on it. A big sign, Tonopah Test Range. So that must be what we're talking about. So we headed down the roads. You go 18 miles, then you get the main gate, and so we just drove along the fence line on the BLM side, the public land side, and we're sitting there waiting for something to happen. You can see the entire base. It's 8 miles away.
Oh, right on.
And all of a sudden, we see an F-117 coming in. And it was like being maybe a 10 or 11-year-old boy seeing your first naked woman. I mean, my camera's literally trembling. I mean, it was like getting laid for the first time. I didn't know what the hell to do. This thing's flying over my head. And I had print film because this is before digital. And people doesn't there's things before digital. Yeah, it was called film. And I wasn't shooting Kodachrome. I was shooting Kodacolor print film.
Yeah.
So I can get it processed locally. And we finished. I went through the whole roll of film. And it was the only F-117. It was followed by a T-38 chase plane. Again, the world hadn't seen the airplane yet.
Right.
So John said, "Well, let's head back to my place. I have a buddy of mine coming over about 9:30 tonight." So we head out of Tonopah Test Range. We head up to Warm Springs, head south on the extraterrestrial highway. It wasn't called that yet.
Right.
Went and had a quick bite at Little Alien and Rachel. Joe Travis was still alive at the time. And as we're heading out through Tippecanoe Valley, we see this road heading into heading towards the mountains. So well, shit, let's go down it. So we drive all the way down. We go through the foothills. We're actually about 3/4 of a mile inside Area 51. And we come up to a guard shack, and you can see the base. I mean, we're up and over, and it's right there. And a nice-looking young man came out. He has black utilities on. He's sporting an M16, but he was just hanging. And we're talking to him, say, "What are you guys doing here?" And he said, "Yeah, we're bird watchers." Well, birds, like metal birds.
Metal birds.
So
you didn't have to specify, right?
So we're just chatting a little bit, and then another guard comes out of the guard shack. Now, he's a reject from the NFL because he's too big. no neck, arms about like this.
That's huge.
And as he's coming out, he's putting his 30-round magazine into his M16, and he pulls it back, put a round in the chamber, so we know this guy's serious. Ooh. And Lear, who's a character and a half, he said, mind if we just take a picture of your guard shack? I mean, if you took a picture of guard shack, I mean, you can see all Area 51.
It's behind the guard shack.
And the big guy looked at Lear and he said, well, if you do, you're going to be interviewed by some very, very unfriendly people.
Right.
I can imagine.
And they're going to want that photo back.
And then I looked at Lear and said, time to go. So we turned around and headed on out. And we get to John Lear's house. He lives near the Mormon Temple in the north end of Vegas. Get to his place, and it's about 9:15 at night. Back in the day, in the early, the late 80s and through the 70s also, there was a thing called photomat. If you had print film, you needed it processed. It's like the coffee baristas now.
Yeah.
A little shack in a parking lot. You go and drop your film off, come back the next day, and it's processed. They were all closed. So I have this film of the F-117. I need it processed.
That's cool.
And Lear said, hey, I got a buddy of mine coming over about 9:30. He just moved here from Albuquerque. I think you'll find him interesting. He designs nuclear weapons. Okay. So doorbell rings. John goes to the front door, and in comes a guy named Bob Lazar. So we're talking, and Bob said, hey, I have a C-41 processor unit at home on the west side of town. I said, let's go to my place, I'll process and print the film, see what you got.
Cool.
Man, that's awesome.
So we jumped in his car, we're heading down West Charleston, and Lazar looks at me, he said, I feel sorry for Lear. I said, what do you mean you feel sorry for Lear? He said, he's from this world-famous family. His dad brought Learjet to the world. And the dumb son of a bitch believes in UFOs. How stupid is that? Well, 2 months later, he got employed at S4.
S4, right.
Yeah.
So I have the distinction of being one of the very few people that knew Bob Lazar before he went to work out in the desert.
Right.
And you couldn't put a gun to his head and convince him the UFOs were real.
Wow.
He said, I'm a nuclear physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah. Have you spoke to him after, or are you still in contact with him at all? Or
I'm going to go. I'm going to visit this summer on my way to Seattle. I talked to his wife.
Uh-huh.
I said, is Bob's cell phone number such and such? Yeah, that's it. And oh, by the way, here's mine in case you can't get hold of if Bob doesn't answer the phone. And he said, is his email the same? Yeah, it hasn't changed.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, no, I've kept in touch with Bob off and on for over 30 years.
That's
30
great.
Plus years.
That's great to know Bob before he was Bob.
Yeah,
you know.
when David Tarlington did a book called The Dreamland Chronicles, there's a chapter called The Elders, and it's about John Andrews and me. And I talk about Bob Lazar. His story has never changed, even when financially it would have been a huge boom.
Right, yeah.
It didn't. He didn't change his stomach. He didn't exaggerate. His story has been consistent. The other thing, when George Knapp went to investigate him, and George Knapp's a friend of mine as well.
Right on.
I mean, it's criminals hang together, dopers hang together, UFO bump of the night guys hang together, women hang together as well. So I don't know. I've cherished my friendship with Bob. I've supported him, and I stand behind him. I believe everything he's said because the story hasn't changed. He's been consistent, and I knew what he did before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the thing is, when George Knapp was investigating Bob's background, he said that he worked at Sandia Labs. There's no record of it.
Right.
But in the Albuquerque newspaper, because Bob had a 300-mile-an-hour jet car that he could take to the drag races.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's his picture. It said, Professor Bob Lazar from Sandia Labs has a fun thing he does on weekend. He drives at 300 miles an hour. And there's a picture of Bob, and he had a jet-powered
Motorcycle.
dragster with a Lamborghini Countach body on it. And he's gone 300 miles an hour in the quarter mile.
Oh, that's cool.
Dang.
So
Didn't they used to shoot fireworks off in the desert too, and
well,
have big parties?
It was called Desert Blast. He did 13 of them. He made his own fireworks.
Uh-huh.
He has a master fireworks license.
Really?
In other words,
cool.
he is certified to build commercial fireworks. And I can remember in his garage, I don't think his neighbors knew, he probably had 3,000 or 4,000 pounds of explosives in his garage. And I was there with my son, and you start out with, you put BBs in, you throw some alcohol in, and you throw whatever the color is, and you swirl it around like you're panning for gold.
Yeah.
You put that in, you're done with that. When it gets to a certain size, and then you may have different colors you put into it. And he had some of the mortar rounds were 4 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches across.
Some big fireworks.
Yeah.
Now, I never made it to Desert Blast because it was always when I was either in Europe. I traveled a lot for business. I was either in Europe or somewhere else. But his company, United Nuclear,
mm-hmm.
he ordered a 5-gallon bucket of hydrazine. Now that's a Class A plus explosive.
Right.
Oh, no.
And this semi pulls up in front of his residential house. Said, "Is this United Nuclear?" Bob said, "Yes." "Well, I got a delivery for you." He opens up his truck, his big trailer. I mean, this is not a Hertz rent-a-car type truck. This is a semi.
Yeah.
Opens the thing up. There's one 5-gallon container on a pallet, and that was all that was on the truck.
Oh my God. Dang.
So he unloaded it. I mean, this stuff is nasty stuff. They used it in drag racers and dragsters back in the day, and you can go from 2,000 horsepower to 3,000 horsepower by just running nitromethane.
Put a little bit in there.
So he didn't know what he was going to do with it. So at one of the Desert Blasts, they put it in a 55-gallon drum. They filled it with, I think, gasoline. I think it was as far as an igniter, and they said they detonated it on this dry lake bed.
Oh my God.
And it was made a very big boom. And another thing they did. This is right after Timothy McVeigh had blown up the federal building in Oklahoma City. John Lear had a friend who worked for ATF, and he said, "We're going to simulate what the guys who blew up the federal center in Oklahoma City, but we're only going to use one." So they got one of your cardboard barrels, 55 gallons or 30, good size. They filled it with fertilizer. They filled it with diesel fuel. They put an igniter in it. They're a mile away, and they detonated it, and everybody was standing got knocked on their ass.
Whoa.
And I think McVeigh had 10 of those in the rental truck.
Oh my God.
That is a
So
lot.
That's
pretty powerful. So I hang around with a lot of crazies. And I've been married a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
And all my wives have said, "You don't have any normal friends." I said, "Well, normal people are boring." I mean, I have two that I know are normal, and they're like, they come in a white box with black lettering. I mean, they have no personality. They don't do anything, but they're dear friends.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm not like that.
Keeps things interesting.
Yeah. And I get in a lot of trouble. I've pissed off a lot of people. I have what you call a step on your dick moment every once in a while. But I'm 75 years old. I don't give a shit what people think of me.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I never have. And it's driven my wife's nuts. I mean, my first wife said, well, what do the neighbors think? I said, I don't give a shit. They don't mow my lawn. They don't pay my bills. They don't shovel my driveway. I don't give a shit. Matter of fact, I do things to embarrass these people.
Yeah.
There's a couple, I won't give their name because they're still very vibrant. A very good Catholic couple, very pro-life, as am I, but very pro-life. Every year at the Minnesota State Fair, I would go to Planned Parenthood, give them $10, and then this is from Bob and Sharon, and I'd write their name, their address. I get stickers. When they weren't looking, I would stick it on their back bumper.
Oh my God!
Oh man!
And they get all this literature. They go to Catholic mass, and they get accosted by their neighbors. You have a Planned Parenthood sticker on the back of your car.
Oh,
I mean, they go
great.
nuts. They didn't know how, and it would happen every year after the state fair.
So you're a prankster too.
Oh, I've always loved that.
It's great.
You have to. Excuse me. You have to smile.
Definitely.
You can't be doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Life is way, way too short.
Yeah. Well, it's probably that attitude that allowed you to go down that path of doing so many interesting things, you know?
Yeah, a good example, and I mentioned it last night in my talk. I'm at the fence line with John Lear. It's 11 o'clock at night. We have our lawn chairs because that's what you do when you're out in the desert. You don't want to sit in the ground. There's scorpions and centipedes and shit. And we're sitting there, we have our feet up in the barbed wire. We're in public lands. And I know exactly where we are. And we see 3 armored personnel carriers coming towards us. Lights are off. We have our NVGs on. So I get up and I wave and I yell, hey, we're good guys, we're taxpayers. And all of a sudden, floodlights, excuse me.
It's all right.
Floodlights, little red dots on my chest, little red dots on John Lear's chest. There's another vehicle coming down the BLM side of the fence. Guy gets out, he's in desert camouflage. He has his hand on his 9mm. Well, I have my 357 and John had his 45. This is for critters, not for shooting bad guys.
Right.
And he said, you're in a restricted area and I'm ordering you to leave. And I said, sir, I don't know who you are, but we're in public lands and we don't have to go anywhere. Yes, you do. You're in a restricted area. And I pulled out the aeronautical map out of my back pocket that gives the longitude and latitude to the second.
Uh-huh.
I said, according to this official government document, this is the longitude and latitude. And if you look at the base of that fence post, you'll see a USGS medallion that gives the longitude and latitude to the second. We're in public lands, and we can be here for 15 consecutive days without asking anybody's permission.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to see some ID, and I said, who are you?
Yeah, give me your ID.
So I'm Captain So-and-so with ASI, which is Advanced Security, Inc. I said, well, you're a rent-a-cop. You don't have any jurisdiction on this side of the fence. And you can just see his jaws just tightening up.
Mad.
He says, I've been deputized by Lincoln, Nye, and Esmeralda County to uphold the laws of the state of Nevada and the federal government. And I said, well, good for you. And he's getting more pissed as it goes on. I said, I tell you what, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. So he hands me his ASI badge, Advanced Security Inc. badge. I said, that's not a valid form of ID.
Yeah.
I need something issued by the state or federal government. And he's getting more pissed. And this is 1996, by the way.
Yeah.
So he hands me his Nevada driver's license. I didn't have my glasses on, my reading glasses on, so I couldn't see it. So I hand him, I lived in Minnesota at the time, I hand him my driver's license. John Lear hands his. He still has his feet up on the fence. And he hands them to the guy on the south side of the fence who goes to the supervisor. Hands it to the supervisor, he turns his light on, I hear him say, oh shit, it's Goodall and Lear. And they just came back, handed her stuff, and dispersed.
So they knew, like, y'all were already a thing.
Well, I
knew you were
had
coming.
5 years active duty. I had a 10-year break, and I spent 21 years with the Minnesota Air National Guard as the wing historian. And my boss, who's a 2-star, I worked directly for him, was at a general's conference in the Pentagon. 40-some-odd general officers there for a whole week. And somewhere in the middle of this conference, my name came up. And General Broman actually, with the time, almost like stopwatch on his watch, timed it. And I was the subject of conversation for 43 minutes.
Oh, man.
And General
Trading stories.
General John Vesey, who is chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who's also from Minnesota, he told my boss, he said, most of us at Joint Chiefs appreciate what your Sergeant Goodall does. Says there's a couple of the younger officers would like to have him whacked, but that's not going to happen. And we've given him a handle. We just refer to your Sergeant Goodall as Agent Orange.
Angel.
Agent Orange.
So I got a handle from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Oh, that's great.
As Agent Orange.
That's great.
And it's gone on from there. I mean, I was first got to photograph the F-117. In March of '94, there was a issue of Popular Science on Area 51. It's written by Stu Brown, dear friend of mine. He's one of the original interceptors.
Cool.
And I'm the one who convinced him to do it. And 6 million people read the article.
Wow.
Either purchased the magazine or read it. The other thing I did for the article, and you may have seen it last night when on my slide presentation, the Area 51 patch, that's my design.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
really?
that's awesome.
And Glenn Campbell and I ended up selling something like 10,000 of them. They were even in the Pentagon gift shop in the lower level.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's
awesome.
So
That's cool.
And again, I remember when the Minnesota Air Guard, when I was getting ready to recover the Blackbird that our museum was given, I go into the Skunk Works there, Palmdale, after they'd moved from Burbank, and the security person wasn't out front yet, and I hit the bell, and I heard the lady in the back. He said, "Who's there?" And they said, "Jim Goodall." He said, "I know that name." She comes around, her name's Glenna Farley. He said, "Well, you're not the 800-pound gorilla everybody says you are." He said, "I've been here at security at ADP for 21 years. I heard your name the first week I was here, and you were mentioned about once a quarter." Said he's a good guy, he's a good historian, he writes good books. But anytime any of you are contacted by Jim Goodall, you have to report it to security. So
it was a security measure to
go through. And because of my passion for Lockheed airplanes, I became friends with Ben Rich.
All right.
Which is the president.
I built a 1/4-inch model of a D-21 drone for him, and the world didn't even know about the drone at the time.
Cool.
And I called him up and said, "Ben, I'm going to be in LA next week. I have something for you. Can I come by and give it to you?" And he said, "Sure, I'll make sure the security knows, let you in the parking lot. And just come into the lobby of the Skunk Works and tell them who you are, and you're here to see Ben Rich." So I get in there, and I have this open box with this D-21 model that they can't talk about. It was still, when they were designing it, it was more classified than the Manhattan Project.
Wow.
Because we were flying an unmanned drone we were going to fly it over the Soviet Union. Never did, only over China.
Yeah.
But I figured that I was just going to leave it there. He was going to get it later. God gave me eyes. I can't help it. So Ben Rich comes out, and here all these engineers are walking, and they're seeing this model, and their eyes are getting really big. And Ben said, "Come with me." So we go into what used to be Kelly Johnson's office. Here, this is nirvana. This is, you can't, other than working at the skunk works, you can't get it any better.
That's awesome.
So I'm sitting in there, and this is the early 70s, and he opens up his filing box on this credenza, and there's a file about 3 to 4 inches thick from John Andrews, my buddy from Tester. He pulls it out and says, "This is from that son of a bitch from Testers," but he said it with love in his eyes and put it down. And then he said, "I got to show you something." So he goes in the room just out next to, inside his office, but a storage room. He brings out a 20 by 30 frame print of the 10 blackbirds there at the ramp at Area 51.
Oh,
And
that's
and it's the first time I'd seen that. He said, "This is just to show you there were more than 2.
Wow.
wow, that's cool.
And,
Yeah, that photo was pretty awesome that you showed last night. With
Yeah.
all of them lined
Yeah.
up in a row. I didn't know they made that many.
And I said, I was just looking at it, and he picked it up and puts it back in the room. And I said, "I want to see it some more." I said, "Well, no, you've seen enough of it." So we were just chatting. Ben, and because of that, now this is the early 70s, I ended up, either he called me or I called him once a quarter for 25 years.
Right.
And I talked to him 10 days before he died. And he was at USC Medical Center. He was dying of esophageal cancer, probably smelling the fumes from what makes stealth work.
Right.
Wow.
And I asked, we were talking about all sorts of stuff, and that's when he told me, he said, "Jim, we have things out in the desert," and he wasn't referring to Area 51. He said, "We have things out in the desert that's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. Not what you think you can build in 50 years, but what you can comprehend." And I can comprehend a whole lot.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
And he said, "If you've seen movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort."
That's incredible.
And that's from
So-
the president of.
I mean,
Yeah,
and
Rich.
I have the honor and the privilege of knowing these guys firsthand and interviewing them and talking to them like I'm talking to you guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right,
it's. I was blessed. I don't know how I gained that distinction of being on. I could call Ben Rich. He could be in a meeting with a group of his senior engineers. June, his secretary, would put me right through. Let me get you, connect you with Mr. Rich. He'd put it on speakerphone, and I can hear a half a dozen guys in the background.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there just shooting the shit, just like he's my buddy, and I'm just, casual conversation about things, spooky stuff.
Yeah.
And he said it always amazed him that I could look through a crack about like that and be able to see 90% of the picture.
Right,
And John between
skill.
John Andrews and I, we were really, really good at that. And when John passed away, this is John Andrews. He's the one who came up with the 32nd scale F-117 model, the quarter-inch SR-71 model, the quarter-inch C-130 model, which is a Minnesota Air Guard markings, by the way, thanks to yours truly.
That's awesome.
When John passed away, he was one of my dearest friends. Michael Schratt is one of those guys too. Michael and I are very close.
Yeah, we just saw him walking
Yeah,
a little bit.
he's staying with me.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Nice.
And John asked me because he died of he got liver cancer and it metastasized to his lungs, and he was sick. He wouldn't tell anybody how sick he was. And in the 20 some odd years I knew John Andrews, I'd never seen him with his hair messed up. Even sleeping out in the desert for 2 or 3 days, he'd wake up and his hair was perfectly coiffed.
Great hair.
So I'm in the hospital and his hair is every which way. He had a stroke in the process. And he said, "Do me a favor." He said, "When I die, will you take my ashes and dump them over Area 51 somehow?" I said, "I would be honored." His wife, Darlene, just a sweetie pie, she took half his ashes and put them in a container for me. And I don't go to funerals pretty much. And the funerals I've gone to, I'm there as a participant.
Right.
But his son, Paul, said, "Anybody want to talk about my dad?" And I got up. And of course, it took me a while to wipe the tears out of my eyes, and I was choked up because in your life, you may meet one or two people that you can find no one who has anything bad to say about them.
Right.
John Andrews was one of those guys.
Yeah.
No one could say anything bad about John. So I'm with John Lear, and this is a Wednesday. So the funeral was over. We jump in the car. We head back to Vegas. I said, tomorrow we're gonna distribute John Andrews' ashes. So Lear had arranged with there at the executive terminal to get on a Jet Ranger. Now, he's certified to fly it, but he had a pilot to do it. So John's in the right seat, the pilot's in the left seat, I'm in the back. We take off, and if you've been to Las Vegas, if you've been heading towards Area 51 as you're going up 15, there's a ridge line. I mean, it's sharp. It goes straight up, and the other side is Apex. And the wind's hitting that thing. I mean, you're all over the skies. So we take off from McCarran. We're heading over towards Apex, and we hit some turbulence. And we're doing everything but being upside down. And I'm sitting there scared shitless.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm looking at Lear, and he's just, no change in expression. The pilot, well, shit, if they're not worried, I'm not worried.
Yeah, another day in an airplane.
Yeah, I'm not Kobe Bryant, so I'm not worried about crashing into a mountaintop.
Oh, no.
That was tragic.
Yeah.
That should
Yeah,
not
it
have
was,
happened.
yeah.
But so we're about 2/3 of the way to Tipico Valley, and the pilot says, I got to pee. Lear said, me too. And I said, well, me three. So we stopped the helicopter in the middle of the desert. 3 guys get out. We water the plants. We get back in. And and we're following the road pretty much. As we go over Hancock Summit into Tipico Valley, almost as soon as we went over the summit, an A7 Corsair II, they call them Slough, stubby little ugly, you know what the rest of it is.
Right.
Takes off, and he's circling us as we're flying up 375. We get over the summit there, going into Rachel, and we head due west. And you can see the fence line, Area 51, because they patrol it, so it's very, very visible. So we're about 3,000 feet above ground level. They sent the A7 headed back, and now a Beech 1900. I think they call it a C-19, I think it is. It took off, and it's circling us. So we have a military escort.
Oh, dang.
Lear gets on the radio. I said, Dreamland, Dreamland. This is John Lear and Jim Goodall announcing that John Andrews on final approach to runway 14 right. And with that, there's about a 30-mile-an-hour wind from the north. I opened the door and poured it out. You can just see his ashes go.
That's
so he's scattered. He's half of them is scattered all over Area 51.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So
That's really
that's
cool.
that's
cool
the
that
type
y'all
of
can
stuff
make that
I've
happen.
done.
Yeah.
Now I'm a published author. I have 27 books. 25 are in print. My 27th one just went off to my publisher. It's a pictorial history on the first 75 years of the Lockheed Skunk Works.
Awesome.
Cool.
It's going to be about 340 pages, 1,100 photos, of which 2/3 have never been in print.
Wow. And this is
cool.
your most recent book that you're
Yeah,
coming out with?
yeah.
Okay, awesome.
But it'll be my crowning glory. There's no way I can top that. The only thing that came close is my 25th book, which is a pictorial history of the blackbirds.
All right.
I'm a blackbird fanatic. I acquired one. I have the distinction of being the only guy in the world to have been in the cockpit of a blackbird at 33,000 feet inside a C5.
Wow.
That's how we moved it from Palmdale to Minnesota. So
Really?
we rolled it up on its own wheels. We had to cut the wings off. We had 1.5 inches of clearance. And later today, I'll bring my laptop.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
definitely
love to
show
see
you
some
some of the
photos of
photos.
that. Yeah, that'd be great.
And
That's awesome. So how can we find the new book that's coming out? Is it going to go into print, or is it going to be like on Amazon?
no,
or?
it's going to be from Osprey out of England. About 340 pages or
Okay.
about, and like I say, 1,100 photos. It'd be hardbound. my current book, if you go into Amazon and you look up books by James C. Goodall, my Los Angeles Class 688 book will show up. It's hardbound.
Okay.
My B2 book, Pictorial History of the Stealth Bomber, is in there. They let me fly the simulator.
That's cool. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's a $90 million video game. I mean, it's better than anything Microsoft can come up with.
Right.
And I thought they were just going to show it to me. I'd been there for 2 days. It was the end of the second day, so I had one more place to go. So we head off to this building off the flight line, and there's a cipher lock to get into the building. Get in there, go upstairs, shooting the shit about this and that and whatever. And then there's a combination lock on another door to go down this hallway. And there was 3 doors. It's almost like The Price is Right, I guess. And each door has a cipher lock on it.
Right.
So they open the door up, and it's a B2 simulator. I thought they were going to show it to me.
Dang.
So we go in there, and the IP says, "You're in the left seat." Oh, so I'm sitting in there, and I've been in the cockpit of a B2.
Uh-huh.
I've walked on top of it. I've looked down the inlet. I've shot the whole airplane. So what are we going to do? I said, we're going to go bomb something.
Cool.
So we take off. The airplane takes off at 27 knots. I mean, it's all wing. It's all lifting surface, and it's a stick. But if you bank like this, you have to go back the other way to counteract, because you'll start going, and if you don't go, you'll keep going.
Oh, dang.
So you have to go like this and go like this. So we're flying, and we're going to go in for an air refueling. I'm not a pilot, but I have a good head on my shoulders. And we come up. It only took me about 3 tries to get into the envelope to air refuel. Now, I'm an airplane guy, and I'm a numbers person. At one time in my life, I can remember hundreds of phone numbers without looking them up. Today, I get lost when I try to remember my own address, but that's age will do that to you. So I finally get to a place where I can hook up, and the instructor pilot says, I've been flying heavies for 6 years before I came to the B2 program. It took me 6 tries the first time, and you did it in 2? I said, beginner's luck. So as I'm looking at the KC-135R tanker, I look at the serial number, and it's a correct serial number for a KC-135. And so that pleased me. At least they're doing their homework. And you could see the face of the boom operator. You couldn't make out if his ethnicity, but you can see the boom operator there flying the boom. And I was a boom operator for a short time in the Air Force. I lost 3 friends in 2 weeks. I said, put me on the ground.
Oh, man.
But it's fate. So I said, we're going to go do a touch and go. So off we go, and coming in, we're 18 miles out. He said, just keep the ball here and keep the little black dot in the center, and you're going to fly down the glide slope. And we're going to do a touch and go, and then we're going to take off. We're about 18 miles out. All of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. 5 or 6 10-megaton hydrogen bombs went off.
Whoa.
There was Frank up in the control room was screwing with me. The simulator is bouncing all over the place. The screen goes black. That's to simulate the flash shield you put on your face, which looks like the stormtroopers from Star Wars. Because the guy who designed it is a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. So we immediately pull away, going full throttle, and getting out of Dodge. So I looked at the IP and I said, "Can I drop one?" He said, "No, that's a classified system."
Whoa.
I said, "But if you were to drop one, where would it be?" Now this is 2015. I said, "How about 1600?" And I was going to say Pennsylvania Avenue. He said, "No, you can't say that." I said, "I know what you're thinking, but no, you can't say that." So okay. So the official certificate I have said 2 hours in the B2 simulator, when in fact I was 2.5. But it was fun. It was just a kick in the butt.
I bet that was cool.
And that's what I
sounds
do
awesome.
with what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I secured the Blackbird for the Minnesota Air Guard Museum, and it wasn't an SR-71, it was a CIA A-12.
Wow.
And the way that started, Ben Rich calls me at home in August of '89, and he said, Jim, I know for a fact the Blackbirds aren't going to make it through Congress. And if anybody can scrounge one, you can. So I said, okay. So I get on the phone the next day. I called the Adjutant General of the state of New York. I said, General Reaver, this is Sergeant Goodall with the 133rd. What can I do for you, Sarge? I said, how would your New York Air Guard like to move the world's fastest airplane in a couple of your C-5s? Quiet for a few seconds. Said, you mean the Blackbird? I said, yes, sir. When you're ready, you call, we'll haul.
All right.
Now, to put it in proper perspective, Pratt & Whitney was trying to get one as well, and they had and I had worked with Arnie Gunderson, who was Mr. J-58 for the Blackbird program.
Okay.
And he was the one who was trying to get it. They were going to put it on a wind vane at West Palm Beach. So even during hurricanes, it would all be pointing into the wind. Mm-hmm. And he contacted the Air Force and said, would the Air Force lease us a C-5? I said, sure. So how much? $967,000 a day plus gas.
Good Lord.
And I scrounged 2 of them.
That's crazy.
For 8 days each.
Damn.
So
sold a lot of Girl Scout cookies then.
So I go to my boss, who's a 2-star, and I said, General Schwab, I want to get a Blackbird for our museum. He starts laughing at me. And I said, sir, rather than laugh at me, give me the opportunity to fail. He said, all right, smart ass, how are you going to get it here? It doesn't fly. I said, I got that covered. What do you mean? I said, I talked to General Weaver at TAG at New York Air Guard. He said, when you're ready, you call, we'll haul. And it would be training for moving outside cargo.
Right.
So it'd be no cost to the museum.
How cool.
And I got the Dayton-Hudson Corporation to hire a documentary film crew. There's a 28-minute, 45-second professionally video on the recovery of the Blackbird that was on public TV for 15 years in Minneapolis.
Oh,
I have it at home.
Dang. Check that out.
But when we loaded it onto the C-5 it was October 27th, 1991. We flew from Palmdale to Travis because we didn't have fuel at Palmdale. Spent the night. Next day we take off, heading to Minnesota, and we're about 45 minutes out. And the loadmaster, who was the chief master sergeant, going down to check the load. I said, can I go with you? And in most cases, you can't. It's pressurized, but he said, well, normally I would have to say no, but since this is your project, go ahead.
Cool.
So I went down, I climbed up the landing gear, down the chines. I had a chock holding the canopy open because the counterbalance was out of nitrogen. Opened that up. I had a 5-gallon bucket in the bottom of the ejection seat with a cushion. Came in there, closed the canopy. I'm in there about 45 minutes, going zoom, zoom. I mean, what am I, 12? And finally I hit a rap on the bottom. It says, boss said we got to go up. Okay, so open the canopy, put the wheel chock back in, climb down, we go upstairs. Now there's 2 parts of the upper level of C-5. You have room for 75 passengers behind the wing box, and then you have the flight crew and everything forward of the wing box. I'm forward of the wing box area. And we're about 40 minutes out of Minneapolis, and the chief master sergeant comes back and he said, Jim, the boss said you can ride in the cockpit when we land. Well, I'm already up there. He said, no, the one downstairs. Oh. So I go downstairs, I get in the cockpit, I'm not restrained or anything, and I'm there when it lands. So no one will top this. I don't care who they are, even Elon Musk or Bill Gates or whatever will ever top it. I've been in the cockpit of a Blackbird at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside another airplane, and I landed it as well inside another airplane.
Jeez.
That's cool.
And you couldn't have slapped the grin off my face with a 2x4 with nails in it. It was like winning the Stanley Cup, the World Series, and the Super Bowl all in the same day.
That's awesome, man.
And,
There's so many awesome stories, dude.
And that's what I do. And people say, oh, you're here for the money. Shit. If you break down, minus all the hardware I've had to buy, minus all the transportation costs, everything else associated, just my time, my writing my books, maybe I make 2 cents an hour.
Dang.
I don't do it for money. I don't even do it for fame. I do it because I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, we enjoy you being here, man, and
I enjoy
so
the
awesome.
people. And I've had the honor and the privilege. I mean, I interviewed Lou Schock, the first guy to fly a Blackbird A-12. I interviewed Jim Easton, the first guy to fly the YF-12, the first guy to do an aerial refueling. I've interviewed Bob Gilliland, the first guy to fly the SR-71. He was up in the mountaintop, second from the right. He was in the blue jacket. I've interviewed virtually everybody who's crashed a Blackbird.
Wow.
I've interviewed pretty much everybody who built and designed specific parts of the airplane. Arnie Gunderson from Pratt & Whitney. I can't remember Jim's last name, but it's not fun. He was from Honeywell. They did the avionics, the stabilization augmentation system, the autopilot, the inlet control system. I talked to the guys from Wyman Gordon who produced the titanium forgings. All these guys, and this is what I've done because it's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the fun ones, I won't give his name because he's still alive, and he's been talked to.
Ooh.
But a friend of mine who's an SR-71 pilot, flying out of Kadena, Okinawa. This is the 1972 time frame. Vietnam War is still going full bore. It's about 11 o'clock at night. He's flying straight and level, about 78,000 feet, a Mach 2.7. 2.7 is the ideal cruising speed for the Blackbird. It's still pretty good on fuel consumption, but you're not thermally stressing anything on the airplane. It's not until you go above Mach 3 that the friction and the thermal heating builds up. 11 o'clock at night, 3/4 moon. He gets a glint off something metallic about 5 or 6 miles away, about 85,000 feet. So he contacts Kadena, that the SRs are flying out of. So we got another bird up. I said, no, you're up there by yourself. No, I'm not. We'll go take a look. So he advances the throttles. Now, Mach 2.7 at 78,000 feet, the engines are an absolute minimum burner. The airplane wants to fly fast. It'll fly its way to destruction if you let it. You'll blow the inlets out first before you do anything. But so Dave pushes the throttles forward, does about a 10-degree bank, and he's climbing and accelerating. He's going to try to get close to this thing. And he figured he was still a mile or so away, maybe 1,000 or so feet below it, not taking his eye off of it. And this thing takes off at about a 30-degree angle of attack and left him like it was heading the other direction.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's,
It's 1972.
And he doesn't know what kind of aircraft that was.
it's not like he's going slow.
So he retires from the Air Force as an SR-71 pilot in 1980. And those guys that are in that community, in the black world, if you want to stay in it, you're already cleared, you know most of the people. So he ended up being the facility manager at Area 51.
Wow.
He was the guy in charge of every single building there. And I asked him, any underground facilities at Area 51? He said, none. If there was, I would have to have seen them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Said, but the technology exists there at the Nevada test site.
Right.
And he said his job was facility manager and to maintain the maintenance on all the non-program aircraft, primarily the chase airplanes, the F-86s, the F-100s, the F-104s and stuff. And he was there for 6 years. And after he was there for a while, he knew pretty much everybody, but when everybody was comfortable with him, we started to ask him, hey, did we build and develop and flight test something that goes maybe Mach 20 out of Area 51? Nope. The Russian, and Ben Rich told me in his office, he said, every car that comes into this parking lot is photographed, not by us, by Russian agents, Soviet agents. This is before the fall of the Soviet Union. He said, I know there's probably a handful of Russian spies working at the Skunk Works, and there's nothing we can do about it until they do something wrong.
Right.
I said, well, how in the hell is that possible? I said, our intelligence guys are in for the short term. Soviets, Chinese, they're in for the long term. So there's a smart kid, 10, 11 years old, single mom. They're struggling, but the kid's brilliant. And out of the blue, Uncle Igor comes into their life and saves the family. He gets mom a job maybe at Lockheed or some other defense contractor. He tutors the kid on mathematics and stuff like that, and guides him to where he wants to go. Finally, he graduates from high school with good grades. He has a shoe-in to some, maybe Caltech or Embry-Riddle or some other university that specializes in aviation.
Yeah.
Helps pay his tuition, gets him all the way through it, and I just happened to know some guy in personnel at Skunk Works. I'll give you a job as a junior engineer. Kid goes in there. He's in there 8 or 10 years. Christmas time, Thanksgiving time, birthday time, whatever. He's over at the house, and he's part of the family. He's been in the family since, for the last 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
And finally, Uncle Igor gets down with the kid, and he said, what do you do? And the kid said, I can't tell you. He said, look, I've known you your whole life. I've helped you get to where you are. You can tell Uncle Igor. And the guy looks around and starts telling him some stuff. And Uncle Igor starts digging a little bit deeper. Now, this guy is clean as far as his background, his security check. They looked up his butt. They even hadn't found any shit. Nothing. He is clean as the freshly driven snow. So now Uncle Igor is pushing him. And finally he brings some stuff home. It's classified, it's top secret, whatever. And then Uncle Igor, now he has his hook.
Yes.
All right.
He says, next week or next month, I want you to bring home some stuff on this program. I said, so I can get fired, I can go to jail. And he said, I got you.
Oh, no.
You either do what I say or I'm going to turn you into security.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, dude.
And that's how they work. Now, here's a guy who was innocent. He didn't have an evil thought in his body, and Uncle Igor helped his family. I mean, how are you going to say no to a guy that pulled you out of poverty, saved your mom from jumping off a bridge, or you going to jail because you were a juvenile delinquent?
Right.
And that's what they do.
Wow.
The Chinese do the same thing, but really the Russians are the best at it.
Dang.
That's
insane. Hey, I hate to cut it off, but we're about to run out of battery.
No.
Yeah.
I run out of battery every once in a while, too, so it's okay.
on the camera.
So you got a battery?
Yeah, we're about to run out. I just don't want it to stop, and you're in the middle of a story, and it shuts down. So.
Right. I'll do more a little bit later.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's charge up and
sounds good.
Is that good for you?
That was
that
awesome.
was perfect.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
We'll come back to it.
Where are your notes? I don't need notes. I have a really good memory.
Definitely don't need any notes.
Yeah.
Jim,
that's
thank you
good
so
stuff,
much,
man.
I really appreciate
It's
you.
kicking the ass.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, I liked you guys. I mean, you just It's Wayne's World, the Austin chapter, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. All right, guys.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll get updated on this again a little bit later. All right, so we'll see y'all later.
Peace.
Take care.